All right, today we're doing something really cool. We're going to peek inside the mind of an AI. We're going to explore what is really going on when a large language model, an LLM, takes your simple question and spits out a complex answer. It's a pretty wild process, and we're going to break it all down. You know the drill, right? You type a question into an LLM, hit enter, and bam, a perfectly written answer just appears. It feels like straight up magic. But what's actually happening in that split second? How does it get from point A to point B? That's the mystery we're cracking open today. Okay, so let's get one thing straight right off the bat. It is not magic. An LLM doesn't just poof, have the answer. Instead, your prompt kicks off this incredible chain reaction across dozens, sometimes even hundreds of different layers. You can think of it like an assembly line for a thought where each layer does its part before passing it on to the next. So where does this whole journey kick off? You'd probably think it starts with some super deep, complex analysis of your question, right? Well, actually, it starts with something way simpler. Basically, a statistical bet. This is kind of wild. The AI's very first move is, well, it's pretty basic. In those first few processing layers, it has almost no context to go on. So what does it do? It just plays the odds. A staggering 75% of its first guesses are just incredibly common words like the, a, or is. It's making the safest, most statistically probable bet it can. And this quote from the research just nails it. Early on, the model is essentially flying blind. It hasn't had enough time to really chew on the nuances of your request. So it does the only thing it can. It falls back on the raw statistics from the gigantic pile of text it was trained on. Okay, so that simple first guess, that's just step one. It's the beginning of a way more sophisticated process. And this leads us to the core idea researchers have uncovered, something they call the guess-then-refine framework. But here's the crazy part. That first super safe statistical guess, it's almost always wrong. Get this, a whopping 80% of those initial high-frequency word guesses get tossed out and changed as the AI thinks deeper and moves through more layers. It's literally second-guessing itself over and over again. And that right there is the guess-then-refine framework in a nutshell. It's a simple two-step dance. First, the early layers throw out a quick and dirty statistical guess. Then, the deeper layers come in and do the real work, using all the available context to shape that rough guess into something that actually makes sense. So here's the easiest way to picture it. Step one is the guess. It's like a brainstorming session where you just throw out the most obvious ideas first. Step two is the refine part. And this is where the real smarts kick in. Layer by layer, it adds more context, ditches the bad ideas, and starts zeroing in on the right word. Okay, but it gets even smarter. The AI isn't just, throwing all its processing power at every single word. No way. It's efficient. It actually saves its energy, its layers, for the hard stuff. You can really see this when you look at different kinds of words. The easy stuff, the little grammatical words like a or the. The model basically nails those down in the first few layers, say around layer 5. But the hard words, the ones that carry the real meaning, the nouns, the verbs, man, those require a lot more brain power. They don't get locked in until way deeper, sometimes taking 20 layers or more to figure out. And this same dynamic strategy applies when it's just recalling a simple fact. So let's say you ask it to name the city with the Statue of Liberty. It has to come up with New York City. But here's a question for you. Do you think each of those 3 words takes the same amount of effort for the AI? Well, the answer is a big, fat no. The hardest part, by far, is just starting the fact. Getting that first word new takes a ton of work. It has to go all the way to layer 27 to lock that in. But once it has that piece, the rest is a cakewalk. York is done by layer 20, and city is a breeze, finished by layer 12. It puts all its effort into the linchpin, the most important piece of the puzzle. This whole two-step thinking thing even shows up in something like a multiple choice question. For the first half of the layers, its job isn't even to find the right answer. It's just trying to identify all the possible answers, A, B, C, and D. It's just gathering its options. Then, and only then, in the second half of the layers, does it switch gears and actually start to reason about which one is the best choice. So why do we care about any of this? Why does this peek inside the machine matter? Well, because it starts to turn this mysterious black box into something we can actually understand. We can start to see the logical, predictable steps it's taking to get to an answer. All right, let's wrap this up with the big takeaways. First, remember that guess then refine strategy. It's a lot like human brainstorming. Start simple, then get specific. Second, those first guesses are just statistical long shots based on common words. Third, the real magic happens deep down in the layers, where context sharpens everything up. And finally, these things are smart about how they think, saving their energy for the tougher problems. What's so cool about this research is that it gives us this incredible window into the AI's mind. We can literally watch it change its mind, layer by layer, correcting its own first impressions. And that leaves us with a really exciting question. If we can see an AI change its mind today, what other secrets about how they think are we going to unlock tomorrow?